that you know are going to take care of you if they're on the payroll or not. It's just that simple.
Well, joining us right now from Denver is someone who knew Javon Walker. Reggie Rivers played 6 seasons with the Denver Broncos, and he's now a CBS sportscaster who previews games and does color commentary for the Broncos. The Broncos, by the way, Javon Walker's former team. Reggie, great to have you with us.
Thank you very much.
Now, Reggie, first, talk to me about Javon Walker. How well did you know him?
Well, I knew Javon pretty well. When he signed with the Broncos in 2006, came over here from Green Bay. I was a weekend sports anchor at CBS, and so obviously sitting down, interviewing him a lot, seeing him in the locker room, seeing him around, and just a very good, nice, likable guy. You know, just not a guy you would expect to get into a lot of trouble, and trouble seemed to find him often.
You know what? That's a story that we're hearing so much with Javon Walker. All of his friends, people that we've talked to, reporters that have talked to him, everybody seems to say the same thing. Such a nice guy, but trouble finds him. Why do you think that happens?
And it is. You know, I'm not exactly sure, and I think his situation is so interesting because listening to the story you're just talking about, you know, in Vegas, he's all by himself. He's got all this jewelry on. He's got all this money. He kind of is a target. He's drunk. He can't protect himself. But the flip side is that a year earlier, or 2 years earlier, he was with Darren Williams. He's in a group of 12 or 13 people. They've rented a limo, and somebody drives by and strafes the limo, and Darren Williams dies in Javon Walker's lap. And so he's seen both sides of that, where he is surrounded by people and someone gets killed, and he's by himself and something happens to him. And I think in both of these cases, I mean, maybe he shouldn't have been where he was, but in neither of these cases can you really say that Javon Walker brought this to himself. It's just that he is a target because he's a professional athlete. He's a target because he's got a lot of money. He's a target because maybe he shows a lot of money. But he's not. He doesn't strike me as the guy, and all the time that I've known him, as a guy who goes out looking for trouble. And I certainly know that type of guy as well.
Okay, now you were just looking, for our viewers out there, you're looking at pictures of Darren Williams, the funeral. I want us to keep showing those pictures. And Reggie, as we do, I want to ask you about that situation. You mentioned that, hey, it's not that he put himself in harm's way in that situation, but what did happen in that Darren Williams situation? How was Javon Walker involved?
Well, it's still, even after the trial and everything, it's still a little bit hazy about how all this started. But Javon Walker, Darren Williams, Brandon Marshall, and a few other players went out to a club on New Year's Eve, and they rented a limo because they knew they were going to be drinking and they didn't want to have to drive home. So they were doing the right thing. They go to this club. Apparently there's some kind of argument that starts up with some young men who are in this club that we later find out these men are gang related. Well, an argument brews up. Darren Williams is apparently the one who said, you know what, guys, let's just get out of here. We don't want to keep talking to these guys. So they all leave. The guys follow them outside, and the argument continues. They're piling everybody into the limo. They drive off. The guys follow them in their car, end up strafing the car with bullets, and one of those hit Darren Williams in the neck, and he was murdered. And Javon was just there. There was no indication that Javon was part of the argument. In fact, all the stories that I heard was that Javon was trying to be the peacekeeper and the peacemaker, trying to diffuse the situation inside the club, and then outside getting everybody into the limo. I mean, I think that he was one of the guys who was more sober than everyone else, which is the opposite of his situation in Las Vegas. And so it's just odd that here is Javon Walker, who seemed to be the peacemaker in this situation, has Darren Williams die in his lap, and then a couple of years later, Javon is targeted again. And again, it's not. He doesn't seem like, through his actions, that he's the guy who would get into this type of trouble.
Okay. You know, as much as we look at this case, and I keep saying in this case, we don't blame the victim here. People can go out, have a good time. They don't deserve to be targeted. But I want to talk to you a little bit about that particular night and his drinking. In his testimony, Javon Walker talked about the types of alcohol, the types and amounts, I should say, of alcohol he consumed. Just take a quick look at this. Do you remember how much alcohol or what type of alcohol you purchased?
It's normally some Magnum bottles of Grey Goose and a couple bottles of Dom Rosé champagne.
Okay. When you talk about Magnum bottles, you're talking about the big bottles?
Big bottles.
Okay. And Grey Goose is a top shelf premium vodka, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
What were you drinking that night?
Grey Goose and lemonade.
Okay. Would you mix the vodka with the lemonade?
Yes, sir.
Is it fair to say you were drinking a fair amount that night?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Reggie, he was drinking a lot that night. And, you know, I've heard some people say, you know, hey, is this something going on with athletes going out partying? I want to remind everybody, this was during the offseason. It's on his time. Soon he'll have to go away to training camp. That was the situation. Is alcohol a problem in the NFL? Because I don't necessarily see that it is, but I'm wondering what your take is on that.
Yeah, I don't know that alcohol is so much of a problem in the NFL. I mean, these are elite athletes competing at a very high level, and so you can't routinely abuse your body that way and then still perform at a high level on the field. There might be the occasional guy who can do that, but I don't, in most cases, I think guys have to do a fair job of taking care of their body. So I don't think alcohol is a huge problem, but certainly for Javon Walker, alcohol that night was a huge problem, and I don't know how big a problem it has been in his life. I certainly saw a change in his personality after the Darren Williams murder.
Talk to me about that. What change did you see?
Yeah, understandably. I mean, when a friend of yours dies in your lap, it's going to change. And I think before that, what we saw out of Javon Walker was that he had a swagger about him, you know, just very confident, very easygoing, relaxed in almost every situation, really believed in his ability on the field, of his ability off the field, very charismatic. And then after that, it was just kind of like the light dimmed in his personality. He wasn't nearly as charismatic. His performance on the field degraded. I think that he's had like 267 career catches. Only 41 of those catches have come after the Darren Williams murder. He is a lesser player after that murder and after that situation. And so I don't know exactly what kind of issues that Javon has, and I think it's understandable that it would change him, but I don't know if he was out drinking like that the way he was in Vegas before Darren Williams' murder. I don't know that, I can't recall ever hearing about Javon Walker going out and getting that drunk. And so it's hard to ignore the possibility that a lot of his behavior after that was a result of having Darren die in his lap.
All right, I just have one more question for you. There's a lot of talk from the defense side of this saying that, hey, Javon Walker had a lot of different stories because he was concerned about what the NFL might do to him if they found out that he was involved in this kind of situation. Do you see, in your experience, that the NFL would maybe penalize or suspend Javon Walker really just for going out, drinking, having a good time, and again, realizing that he's the victim here?
Well, he is the victim here, and Roger Goodell has taken a pretty aggressive approach with players, because what he was seeing when he came in as commissioner was that players would go out and they would do crazy things. And Javon, first of all, Javon is the victim in Las Vegas, but Javon did a lot of things that he probably wouldn't do again. And I think he has said that if he had it to do over again, he wouldn't do, because he understands he's a target and he has to protect himself. But I think Roger Goodell was seeing a lot of situations where players were going out and doing a lot of crazy things, and then the league would kind of sit back and wait and see, well, does the guy get convicted? If he gets convicted, we'll suspend him. And you would have guys who would get arrested over and over again. So Goodell started to say, you know what, we're not going to wait for a conviction. We're going to deal with these behavior issues as they occur.
But just for a guy who goes out and drinks and maybe gets a little too drunk but hasn't broken any laws or done anything wrong, was that reason for, as the defense says, Javon Walker to not tell the truth and try to tell different stories so he doesn't get in trouble, in your mind?
Well, I think it is true. I mean, his job is not that different from your job, that you have an image that you have to maintain, and if you go out and people see you drunk on the town, it hurts your ability to do your job. And I think Roger Goodell says that he doesn't want athletes, his professional football players, going out, getting drunk in public, and you know, that is a chargeable offense, public intoxication. I mean, so I think that he's worried about the image of the teams, and he's worried about the safety of the players. And that if he starts dealing with some of these image issues, they also have the ancillary effect of also helping to protect the players, because guys don't go out and get drunk as often, don't stay in situations that are dangerous, maybe aren't flashing as much money, aren't doing things that make them a target more than they already are.
All right, Reggie Rivers, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
All right. FBI agents are on the manhunt